Oh, Undefeated, man. I absolutely love the Undefeated line. They have some brilliant collaborations that come out that are just for Japan. Special edition Japan stuff. I have this really sweet hoodie with the red circle in it, and it's just a beautiful brand. It's got a ton of great collaborations, and when it comes to Nike, there's a ton of history in terms of what they have done. Things like Air Max 90's already been out there, and this kind of thing, this whole Air Force One versus Dunk kind of thing as well. There's a lot of history going on, but there's a lot going on in the future for these shoes too, and that's kind of an interesting way to think about it. I hadn't thought about this already. I'm shooting this video on August the 13th, I think it is, and I see that the drop date is August the 6th and August the 20th. August the 6th specific for Undefeated, and August the 20th for the sneakers app here in Tokyo, Japan. But all that aside, I haven't seen a drop date for overseas, for the US, for Europe, for anything like that. So these are the kind of shoes that really sit where I want them to sit, in that place where I know for sure August the 20th coming out in Japan. I don't know about overseas, so this could be one of those shoes that's coming here a bit earlier than it's coming there. So definitely let us know in the comments down below if you know where the drop date is in different places around the world, like Europe and North America. And that fits in with what we've been doing at the channel recently about me saying I can't get these in my size because my feet are way too big for the Japanese market, but I'm happy to get one pair for one person out there at retail plus shipping if somebody wants them. So if somebody's particularly interested in these shoes, definitely let us all know. And there's been that video that's linked in the description down below about, you know, the details of that whole getting them at retail and all that kind of stuff and before the drop date. So if you want more details on that, check out the link below. Now what we're looking at behind me here is the Air Force Ones and one pair of Dunk Lows, and this is my question that I'm throwing out to you guys there, is what's going on with the other two colorways from the Dunk Low side of things, because this took me by surprise. Now it might be that I've just been sitting there blind in Japan, because I am here in Tokyo, Japan, and I haven't seen these other two colorways and they've already dropped and everybody else is just like, yeah, that's old news. Or it might be that the site that I got these colorways off of, which is the Japanese site, is ahead of the game and you guys are seeing these images for the first time. And what I'm talking about is, yes, we've got the Air Force One versus the blue Dunk Low that we kind of, I think a lot of people already know about, but the other two colorways on the Dunk Low side look like this. It's a terrible shot of what looks like a triple black shoe, but with a sort of extra bit of color on the outsole, and it's because it's not at all the official Nike promotional material shots, but what you do get there is that sense of the triple black going on in this colorway, and then on top of that you've got this brown pair here, and the brown pair is much easier to identify. Two major elements in it. One is the Undefeated branding on the heel there in the classic Dunk Low position, and we'll get back to that later when we look at the Air Force Ones. The 5 tally marks, 4 of them running vertically, and then there's the diagonal running through the middle of that, the 5 tally mark, Undefeated branding on that heel section there. So these are much more easily identified compared to those black ones. But I hadn't heard anything about this colorway, the blues versus the Air Force Ones. Yes, lots to talk about in there, but these extra two colorways, I'm like, didn't see those come in. They're not on the sneakers app here yet, but maybe they'll come. Maybe they're friends and family, maybe they're a regional drop, maybe they're going to be on sneakers app a little bit later, who knows, maybe they've already dropped as part of the first pack, I don't know. But for me, it's a big deal that there's 3 Dunk colorways and not one. According to the Japanese site, it's called Sneaker Dunk. According to that site, they're saying there's 3 colorways coming on August the 20th, so watch this space. But what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on these two right here. That's the blue Dunk Lows and the Air Force Ones, to see the comparison between the two. And I think what I'll do is I'll start on the insole, because that's where it says exactly about what's going on here. Dunk versus Air Force One, or Air Force One versus Dunk. I can't remember which way around it goes, but the insoles on both of these shoes tell us the story that it's about battling it out between two of the classic silhouettes from the Nike line from the past 35-40 years. The Air Force One and the Dunk are absolutely right up there, top drawer classic silhouettes, and it's the idea is that they're sort of challenging each other, going head to head, and it totally works with these shoes because the Air Force Ones are really stripped back. The base colors are very light grays, whites, sails and stuff like that, with colorful hits on top of that, and then the Dunk Lows are very much more about the upper being the color, and then the branding and the swoosh being sort of paired back. So it's that kind of contrast between the two. It's kind of an interesting little way that's going on this. And there's also an extra little element that they're calling them the what's it called now? The 5 on it, I think is what they're calling. And that 5 on it refers to there being 5 different materials on these shoes. And I doubt if I'll be able to remember all 5 of them, but I know there's roughed up suede, nubuck, leather, snakeskin, and then I can't remember what the 5th one is, but there's comparison and there's contrast between the 2 shoes and those materials, but the idea is basically both shoes made from 5 materials but in very, very different ways. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to focus in on that snakeskin stuff, because I think that's a really important part of both shoes, the story of both shoes. And there's a little bit of deception going on over on the Dunk side of things, because I think people will assume that the line that runs from the toe up across the laces and then down into the heel will be all snakeskin, because that's kind of what you expect to see, and you see what you expect to see. But then when you zoom on something like this and you see the part where the top of the laces then joins into that ankle section, you can see that the snakeskin actually stops short and it doesn't go all the way around to the back of these guys, but it is very consistent in that blue color across the top of the shoe and that complete line. And then below that you've got the swoosh, which is where the roughed up suede comes in on these Dunk Lows, and then behind that you've got the purple midfoot panel, which is important because that's where we can connect this shoe from that midfoot panel down to the outsole on these guys, and you get a really solid connection between those two. So that's a look at the sort of Dunk Low and the snakeskin side of things and some of the materials that are on that shoe. But then if we flip it out to the Air Force Ones, you can see what I mean about the base being very light and white and light greys and stuff like that, until you get to the swooshes, which were in a pale or sort of roughed up suede on the Dunk Lows, but now we look at it on the Air Force Ones and you can see that snakeskin has been brought across from the Dunk Lows and placed right in there on that swoosh in the same color and the same texture. And then you run back from that swoosh into the branding panel, and it's a different color on the back, but you've still got that snakeskin effect going on the back of the Air Force Ones. But I suppose, before I want to go to the branding, but before we go there, I suppose I should complete the sort of circuit that we did with the Dunks, where we also went down to the outsole. So we might as well have a look at the outsole on the Air Force Ones, because that again is totally the opposite of what the Dunks were doing. The Dunks is very much a powerful purple that matches the midfoot on the upper, whereas in the case of the Air Force Ones, we're playing with sails and lighter color materials in both the midsole and the outsole. So it's a good place to sort of finish that up, and then into the branding. And this is where I said earlier, the Air Force, not the Air Force Ones, the Dunk Lows have that classic position of the branding on the heel of the undefeated tally marks on there, and I've never seen it. I think I can say never. No, that's an exaggeration, because I'm thinking about the Drew League and Puerto Rico and things like that. So there have been Air Force Ones that have put branding down here, but it's rare. Instead of saying never, let's say it's rare. So if you look at the heel section of the Air Force Ones, you can see that undefeated branding in exactly the same place, the 5 tally marks on there. And that on an Air Force One, I think, is a big deal. It's very rare to see that. And then if we go up to the tongues on the Air Force One, you'll see the 5 strip branding, the tally mark branding from Undefeated, again up there on the tongues of these guys, again with a little bit of colour, the tongue itself being the pales and the whites and the greys that the rest of the upper sort of base is in, and then on top of that you get the pops of colour like the swoosh and the branding on the back, and it's the same on the top of the tongue with the instead of it saying Nike Air Force One, it's the 5 tally mark branding of the Undefeated line. And then the final thing to do is go over to those Dunk Lows and have a look at the top of the tongue on there as well, and see that comparison between them and the Air Force Ones, which finishes a pair of very, very nice shoes. The quality of the materials, the construction, the collaboration with Undefeated is one of my favourite collaborations that I just love to see, and that whole sort of 5 on it, the 5 different materials going in there, because often I would say a shoe, basically shoes generally have one material that they're made from. They might add a second material in there for a hit of a bit of contrast, like if you think of Jordan 11s with the patent leather to contrast the rest of the shoe, but having 5 different materials play off of each other and do it without it being too in your face and too noticeable is actually quite a difficult trick to pull off. And for the Air Force Ones and the Dunk Lows, I think they've absolutely nailed it. They've perfectly got those 5 different materials in there without overloading the shoe and overloading buyer, the consumer out there who's not going to look at either one of these and think, man, that's too much on there. Or the brown and the black colorways as well. For who knows where they're going to go and when they're going to come. Definitely something to watch out for. And if you guys can let us know in the comments down below, for sure, make sure you go ahead and do that. Quick final word, 14,300 yen, which is about $143, is the retail price of both of these guys here. So if you're interested, let me know in the comments down below, and when they come around on the sneakers app, I'll give it a shot for you. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. For now though, time to wrap up this video. Another video in the bag as we charge towards 1,000 consecutive days on YouTube. We've got about 2 more weeks to go before we hit that 1,000 consecutive days without a single day missed. And with that being said, the last thing to do is just to tell you that I do this every single day. And because I do it every single day, that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.